So people were bringing in R32s, and there was an article in the Japanese newspaper, and they were talking about how the Americans are bringing these cars in and selling them for a really high price. We used to buy them for 10, 12 grand for like grade 4s in auction.
You mean GTRs?
GTRs, yeah. And they're selling for 25 here. That's greed. That's too much. You can't, I mean, you're literally screwing the market by doing that.
Hello YouTube, it is now the last official day of Drift Week 2. And just like last time, we've already done 2 full weeks, like 14 days of drifting and driving across the country and everything else we've done. We're now here at the Clutch Kickers track, and the event is over today and everybody's already planning to do a bonus day tomorrow, so we're gonna drive the Clutch Kickers track tomorrow, so 2 days here. And then everybody wants to go back to, not everybody, but a bunch of people want to go back to mid-pond, so we'll be drifting in mid-pond again, making it like 9 or 10 days of drifting, 4,500 or, no, God, it's gotta be more like 6,000 miles of street driving by the time we're all home. This is the most insane journey, and it couldn't have been an insane journey because it couldn't have been brought to you without all the great sponsors like BC Racing Coilovers and ECU Masters. But this video is all about Trenton, one of the sponsors, his amazing JZX90, his trip around the country with us. And the title of this video is going to be it's more about the golden age of drifting, because I think there's something cool to talk to him about, the golden age of like importing cars and Japanese cars and how it's kind of passing and how we have a new one rising in America that's quite different. So this is Trenton. Introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and let's get this conversation started.
What's up, YouTube? I'm Trenton from Y Plate Imports. We're based out of Portland, Oregon, and this is what I do. I do a lot of importing. This is kind of my passion. I used to actually live in Japan when I was in the military over there from 2012 to 2016. And the real reason I got into this is because when we worked over there, some people made $1,200, $1,500 a month, and it really just wasn't enough to live off of. So I got into a little bit of the side business, selling cars, helping the people out on base, and then, you know, getting them into their dream cars. But I came from a drag racing American muscle background, and how I was raised is I used to believe that, you know, V8 was the only way. But then when I actually moved to Japan, I realized I was very wrong. So yeah, I got over there and started flipping some cars, and then I had to make a decision, you know, whether I wanted to stay in or get out, and this is something I wanted to pursue. I saw that people were getting into importing here in the US, and I went ahead and decided, okay, I'll get out, I'll do a year of college, take some of like the classes I need for international business, and then went ahead and sent it home and got into it. So
awesome. Okay, let's jump into that in 1 second. I want to back up because I'm all over the place. I'm scatterbrained. Real quick, it's end of 2 weeks of drifting, a drift week. What was the best part? What was the worst part? What was it like doing drift week? And this is a stripped out race car that makes like 500, 600, 700 horsepower or something like that. I rode in it. It's a really good drift car. It is not a street car. How was the whole trip?
It was overall really well. I mean, we had just a few minor issues, so I was really happy about that. And kind of this trip for me was obviously, you know, meeting new people, getting on some of the tracks I haven't been to, being with the friends I already have, but working out the little kinks I have in this car before we go into Pro-Am again next year. Because I ran Pro-Am this year, and every single event we had a problem. But Brandon's actually my spotter, and he told me, don't make a change every single time you go to a new round. And I didn't listen, and that was the wrong way to go. So I think we're done making changes. We've got it pretty well dialed in. Overall, I thought I broke my tranny at Speed Sports. That was a heartbreaker, but it ended up when we pulled it apart, just one bolt fell out, so that was really lucky. Power steering rack, that started leaking, but that was actually already broken when I got it back from the guys who rebuilt it. It broke in shipping because I left all the lines connected, even said fragile, and they tossed it around, so we welded it up. We knew it was going to go bad, but that wasn't too bad. And then finally I broke a couple teeth off off the ring the other day, so we swapped the diff out this morning. We're good to go. Other than that, she's ran great, engine's perfect. We just put a new bottom end in. We fully built it before we came on the trip, and that's worked out very well for us so far.
And it's a 2J?
2J, yeah. So
is this the correct car for the trip, or would you take something like luxurious? Because Adam's car is a complete interior car, super comfortable, lower horsepower, 1J, not nearly as aggressive, but he gets down and like he's driving amazing. Your car is the opposite end. It's more of a race car. you're driving amazing and everything, but is there that much of a difference to the two cars on track? You know, especially on these smaller tracks, you're enduring a lot of pain and suffering to get this crazy car around.
So I think that's part of the entertainment overall.
Yeah.
I mean, when you told me going on Drift Week, you want to have a race car going across country. So I said, okay, I'm going to take a race car across the country. You know, some people that still have AC, candy asses, you know, it's nice and all, but I think this is more of a challenge, you know, sticking it out and actually doing it.
Okay. All right, now let's get to the meat and potatoes of this episode. This episode, I talked to him and kind of planned it out a little bit, just a tiny bit, but I try and get like a unique thing about each driver that, how do you say, is unique to them. And what's unique to you for this is not just talking about Drift Week, because you've already heard a million videos about Drift Week. It's about the golden age of drifting in Japan and the cars they had and the tracks they had and the culture they had, and everything was perfect for that time period. And now it's dying. Their cars are becoming super expensive. They don't build anything rear-wheel drive and turbo and cool anymore that's manual transmission and inexpensive. They don't have $500 R32s and JZXs lying around anymore to just go total and blow apart. Like, that has passed, I think. And you're importing cars and they're getting more expensive. While in America, we currently are like them 15 years ago or 10 years ago. We have tons of rear-wheel drive cars that are manual transmissions, stupid cheap, and you know, all over the place, like 350Zs, Mustangs, Camaros, even Corvettes to a certain extent. And that probably will last for another 10, 15 years, especially because we don't dismantle and crush our cars quite as quickly as the Japanese because of their road legality things. What do you think about all this? Because you are an importer.
This is actually something I learned when I was still living there. I think it was back in 2016, right before I left. And importing had started. People were bringing in 32s.
Wait, what year was it? 2016?
2016, okay. Yeah. So people were bringing in R32s. And there was an article in the Japanese newspaper, and they were talking about how the Americans are bringing these cars in and selling them for a really high price. We used to buy them for 10, 12 grand for like grade 4s in auction.
You mean GTRs?
GTRs, yeah. And they're selling for 25 here. That's greed. That's too much. You can't, I mean, you're literally screwing the market by doing that. And you look at every other importer around the world, and I talk to my guys in the UK, and every time he wants a car, it's like, yeah, okay, if I can make 2,000 pounds, I'm good. That's fair, right? You know, make 20% or something like that on your money. So anyways, the Japanese basically said, look, the Americans are making a lot of money in these cars. We recommend that you raise your prices. And they did. They went up. Okay, so then they went up to 20 grand. Now they're 30, 25 grand. Now they're 35, 40. It just kept going up because they wanted to make their money. It seemed like nobody was really satisfied with just like making a decent living and moving on. So that was the hard part for me. And especially when I buy my cars, I'm very particular. Like, it needs to be no rust, no accident. I sometimes might buy, like, if it had like a, you know, a rear quarter damage or something, if I'm going to sell it as a drift car, because it's not going to be like on a line or the frame's not going to be kinked or anything. And we'll usually disclose that information, but most of the time I want a perfect car. And as of this date, pretty much everybody I've sold like an X90 to, no one's toasted a motor or a trans. And it's been a couple years of doing X90s now, so I'm happy with that. And generally most of my customers are happy, and we don't see them come back to the shop for any repairs. So, yeah.
So is the time period of like cheap Japanese cars in Japan over? Is there anything over there besides JZX and, you know, Skylines that are inexpensive and you can get your hands on, kind of thing? Because like, there's a couple different ways of thinking about it. One, if you're selling JZX and you're marking them up 20%, doesn't matter if they're $10,000 or $30,000, you make more money the more they are, because if it's a 20% spread, you know, you make more selling one at 30 grand than you do at 10, so it doesn't matter where, you know, the price goes. And then there's another thought process of like, you just don't want to get stuck holding a $30,000, you know, JZX, or if anything happens to it or gets, you know, damaged, like you can't sell it. So what do you think about all that?
Well, I personally think that the importing market is going to take a dip. You got a lot of people who are buying these cars that are 20 to 30 years old, and I would say half to 75% of them are financing. The problem with that is 20 to 30 years old, how many people are making $75,000 a year? Because that's what it's going to take to buy a $40,000 car. And I don't see it happening. I see a lot of kids come in, they have high hopes and dreams, and I really want to help them, but you know, the only thing out there is a 30% interest loan for a 15 grand loan amount.
Oh my God.
You know, for guys who just don't have credit yet.
Yeah.
Or just starting out, so it's kind of impossible for them.
I kind of just thought everyone was buying them in cash. They're buying them on credit. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, about 80% of my
Besides,
deals
my note's
are on
good.
credit.
Am I good?
Hope so.
I just sneezed. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, so about 80% of my customers are financing.
That's wild.
Yeah, I know some people do have a lot of cash buyers.
Mhm.
You know, some of the bigger businesses and stuff. Probably like the location, like the guys in California. Same thing with like Driver Motorsports out in Virginia.
Mhm.
I think they sell a lot of cash deals, but it's just a different clientele. And I think that's the difference between me and when I started this business compared to a lot of other importers. I wanted to do drift cars.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of people are building street cars, show cars, and things like that, and that's kind of I would say a bigger market, because not a lot of people want to spend, you know, $20,000 on a JZX and take it to the track and wreck it.
Mm-hmm.
It's risky, you know. I used to sell mine about 17 to 19 for manuals, and that was kind of the fair price. You know, whether it was like a grade 4 and a B or something, and we'd usually bring it in, do some stuff to it, and basically make it ready. Like, you know, put a front mount on it, do an intake, kind of like some preliminary, so they can basically just drive right off the shop and go to the track, which actually has happened before.
Mm-hmm.
And I know one dude who drove straight to the track that weekend and has been shredding it for a year and a half. Never had an issue.
That's awesome.
So it makes me
They're
happy to hear
such
that.
reliable, good cars. I mean, I've had mine at Ebisu for years, and we obviously do maintenance to it, but it's the same engine. We finally killed the transmission. 5 or 6 years of drifting.
Yeah.
They're amazing. Still on the same diff. So, where do you think the Japanese are going to go from here? They're exporting all their cars. The cars went up in price drastically, and I don't think the Japanese probably will care that much to spend 20 grand on a JZX 90, which they normally got for $1,000 or something like that. But maybe they'll still have all the crappy ones there because those won't get exported. What is it going to do to the market and the drift scene there?
So I think when it comes to the market of the drift scene, the Japanese kind of sell to their friends, right? They've got their own groups that they sell privately, but when it goes to an auction, they know the auction is for export for most parts. You know what I mean? I mean, some locals do buy it, but that's kind of a rarity. So I think that they'll have their own market and they'll have their own price. And if they're working with a foreigner, that's a different price. But that's just my opinion.
So you think the drift market will be good for quite some time?
I think it'll be okay. I don't think it's going to be such a low price. Like, my first 100 was $3,200. My second one was $5,000. And they were mint, straight to the track, good to go. That's impossible. I think about, was it 6 weeks ago now, a JZX 100 TRD model went for 4.0 yen.
Like $38,000 or something?
38,000.
Holy cow. That's
I mean,
wild.
not everyone's going to be at that price, but we've never seen a price like that before. And it's like, okay, you're going to sell your car today at 38 grand, and then a year later, you're going to sell another 100 that you have. Are you going to put your reserve at anything less than 38? No, and I think that's the problem, is once the prices go up like this, they might come back down a little bit, but they're not going to come back down to where they used to be.
I kind of always thought the GTR market was, for say R32s and stuff, was a bubble, because they made supposedly like 55,000 of them. This is off the top of my head. I'm sure there's nerds out there that know the exact number, but that is not a rare car at all. And they were kept in pretty good condition by the Japanese, so there's more of them out there than you would think. I'm very surprised that the price shot up so much. I wonder if it's a bubble market. But also at the same time, they're being exported all around the world at once, so it's not like the Americans are gobbling them all up. You know, New Zealand and Australia and wherever else they go gobbles them up.
Yeah, I think the UK has a lot of 33s.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because you have different countries around the world, and they kind of have their one car. Like the one car they imported because it was cheap at the time. And like, I lived in Thailand for a year. I saw an A31 almost every day, and almost all of them were 1J swapped, and they were still $3,000, $3,500. They're cheap over there.
Yeah.
UK, R33s everywhere. I'm not sure about every other country, but I know that when the 33s got close to legal, they skyrocketed. They doubled in price within the last 6 months, becoming US legal.
Wow.
It got to the point that the Japanese knew the Americans were going to buy it, and they just started raising their price. They know their date when they can export it to US, and it's like, okay, here is my new price.
You know what's crazy about that too is there's a ton of guys, you probably included, that are exporting cars and they're storing them in Japan for an extended period of time before they ship them out because they can get decent prices for them. And I know of a ton of R34s that are parked all over the place, owned by foreigners that buy them now in Japan and don't even plan to export them. They're just holding them there for years at a time, and then when they find a buyer or whatever's going to happen, they then deal with the process, getting them where they need to go. They're not even like shipping them anymore. It's crazy. It's such a weird market. Are you doing that too?
I did some. I did some of the 90s that way so I can keep the prices down. But I don't do it anymore. It's too hard. It's hard to spend X amount of dollars and sit on it. You know, I can understand if somebody's running a business who's a millionaire already, that's fine and dandy. But I didn't come up from a family of money or anything like that. I started literally off of a military income to grow this business to where I'm at now.
So what are you going to transition to in the future? Because we've kind of talked about the cars are getting expensive, and it seems like you were kind of the golden age of importing. Is kind of, I don't know if it's ending, because it's not, because the cars are skyrocketing in price, which means there's going to be a lot of people making money off of them. But how do you transition into something that works for you? What are you going to do?
That's a good question. We have the shop, we have a dyno, we do a lot of builds. It might just transition to that, into like the maintenance aspect and performance. But to be frank, with the way the prices are going right now, I don't see this lasting.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see me still doing the importing, and that's kind of a personal preference. If I sell a 90 today for 17 grand, and with 100s becoming legal and the price is going up, okay, that car isn't worth $35,000 to me, and that's screwing somebody over.
Yeah.
And
well,
I don't
it's not though. It's what
that.
they want, and the market is bearing it. Because like I bought probably about 13 or 14 JZX, and I'm sure you've bought like 100 of them at this point.
Yeah.
I was getting them for manuals at like $5 grand, and for automatics, nice automatics for $2 grand before shipping and stuff. I don't know. I already lost my train of thought. I was just saying, what were we talking about?
Prices of the cars that you bought.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I get sidetracked in my brain. The prices are so crazy. I don't know where I was going with that. Cut that part. I honestly don't know what I was talking about. Okay, what else do you want to talk about? Oh, here we go. So what are the Japanese going to do for drifting, do you think? You said that because I'm always super interested in that. I'm always super interested to think about the drifting in Japan. The people are getting older. They're not having children. The average age of a drifter over there is what, 45 or something like that? It's old. What?
Shinji's kid. He's like 12, isn't he?
Right, but I mean, that's an anomaly. It's a drifter's son. They're not bringing in all those young people.
Yeah.
I think the fans of all that stuff are much older.
I know from a Japanese aspect, they are very responsible.
Yeah.
Especially with finances. You don't see people financing cars over there. And
Really? They don't finance cars?
Not like in the drift scene that I know of.
Wow.
And you'll see a guy go to Up Garage, and he'll go, okay, this is what I want, this is the price, and he'll go work and he'll save the money and he'll come back and pay cash for it. He doesn't spend the money he doesn't have. And I think with the prices going up, that's going to be very difficult for the younger generation to get into it. They might have to substitute and do cheaper cars they never wanted to do. I mean, a lot of people get into S13s to start with.
What kind of cars would they do now, though? Because even S13s are getting expensive.
Yeah.
Everything.
The last S13 I paid for, I think I paid 16 in auction.
16,000?
Yes.
Oh my God, was it cool?
It was all right, yeah.
But it wasn't like a D1 car.
No.
You used to be able to buy D1 cars for 16
that price. But here's the funny thing.
Oh my God.
Is you get a customer that comes to you and they say, I want an S13, I got 12 grand budget. Well, it's not going to happen. I literally tell them, it is not going to happen.
Think about that. You can't buy an S13 with $12,000? That's insane. Yeah. Sorry, keep going.
I mean, not something of the quality that I want to put my name on.
Yeah.
I'm sure there is some clapped out S13s out there that you can buy and do something with, but go somewhere else. I'm not going to do that stuff.
Yeah. That's a lot of effort to go get a clapped out junk car that someone's going to be unhappy with.
Yeah. I've had this happen too, where a guy says, I don't care, it can be bad paint, it can be body damage.
Let's turn around some and point over here so we don't hear so much highway noise. Perfect, keep going.
I've had a guy tell me it can be bad paint, body damage, whatever, no issue. And I'll straight tell him, I'm like, that's fine and all until I import it 2 days later, the motor toast or whatever, and then you're coming back to me saying I'm the asshole.
Yeah.
That's why I don't do it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna fly with that. Like, it's not the kind of business model I want to go after.
So in America, I'm excited right now because we need the tracks, which we're kind of starting to get. Like, we've just done a ton of good kart tracks in the US for Drift Week 2. I developed the whole idea of Drift Week 2 around kart tracks, really tight tandem, amazing tire wear. I wanted to get away from the high tire wear tracks, a lot of the big places that are too big. Anyways, those places are awesome, but if you're gonna do 7 to 9 days of drifting on track, you need to have kind of what we did with kart tracks, and it's very Japanesey kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so we're getting the tracks to let us on more. The drift cars are getting cheaper. Like in America, I was almost thinking about, would the Japanese now start importing drift cars back to America, like our Mustangs? They're not going to, but I was just, we did it to them. It'd be hilarious if they're importing $2,000 Mustangs and, $7,000 Corvettes back to Japan. Because think about this, a Corvette, a C6 Corvette is now significantly cheaper than this. Significantly.
Yes.
You can almost get like a salvage title beat up Z06 for the price of these things. I mean, it's mental.
Yeah. I don't know the rules behind like importing a track car in Japan, but I know if you're importing something for the street, it's very expensive.
Yeah.
And it takes time. That's why you don't see them too often over there.
Yeah, and they don't have so many trailers, so it's not going to happen. But we do have a golden age of drifting really taking off, I think. YouTube, cheap cars, mechanics now that can work on stuff, like shops, like everything is starting to get really good. Tuning industry is getting way better. You've been in it for a while. Remember, like, what would you do for a ton of cars besides just a Power FC? There's nothing else you could do. Now there's tons of standalones that you can get. Tons of different options for everything.
Yeah, we mostly run Link now, and that's what Oscar's really good at tuning at. So, I mean, he's tuned every car of mine so far, and I've never had a complaint. It's 100% all the time.
His car runs amazing too. I rode in it. This car is a fantastic drift car that didn't really have any squabbles. Like my V8 car is just like blah, 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 blah. Sometimes the idle's real high, sometimes it's a mess. It's a hammer of a car and I love it. But this just idles perfectly, drives around track perfectly, lap after lap after lap after lap. This is a way more sorted car than mine. You're like, yes, your car's a piece of crap, Aaron.
Yes, you're right, Aaron. But no, I'm happy with it. I mean, I expected, being this built, that you're going to have issues. That's drifting. You're going to have issues. And so far, I haven't had a major issue.
No, that's amazing. Well, you did do a diff and you opened up the transmission.
Well,
those are major issues for a lot of people.
It is, yeah.
You have an excellent mechanic with you.
Oh yeah, he's saved me on this entire trip.
Yeah.
Hands down. It's kind of funny, my wife asked me, if you do Drift Week again, who are you going to bring? Oscar.
You're like, not
Oscar.
My wife.
I would bring him over anybody because I'll get the job done a lot faster if there's any issues.
Yeah.
And he's helped us all out. We've done Dan's car twice.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, we've done Dan's car twice, 2 trannies, and a motor. Oh man. And then helped out Brandon with some wiring.
That's a whole lot of nah.
It is. We've all just kind of helped each other out and get back on the road. But I know that Oscar has had his hands on all 3 of the cars. So he's helped everybody out.
How close is the IS300 to the JZX chassis?
Very.
A lot. Why don't you specialize in like putting together JZs and stuff into IS300s? Just too expensive with labor.
See, this is why I drift this, and I had the 102 that I drifted. It's my favorite car. It's what I learned on. I actually learned at Ebisu in a 100, and it's kind of like, okay, Brandon, he did ISs, and he did S13s, and that's kind of what represents his business. He drifts that. And this is what represents me. This is what I drift, but I don't drive left-hand drive.
Oh, you could figure it out.
I've done it twice.
You can figure it out.
That's why I didn't do the tire comp.
I totally understand changing over from right-handed drive to left-hand drive. It's tough. I've never gotten fully comfortable with right-hand drive because I don't know where the back corner of the car is. I mean, it feels like it's 15 feet away. I'm sure you do the same thing when you get in the wrong side car for you're like, oh my God. You're like, yeah. You can drift it. That's not the problem. The problem is like where the back of the car is.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's kind of funny. Hurt told me to pull in Brandon's car when I was taking it back to the pits. All right, I gave it a little spin.
Yeah.
That was a success.
Brandon Wicknick's car?
Yeah.
You liked it?
Well, I just did first gear, just a little donut.
Yeah.
But it's so different to me. I know when I hopped in Brandon's car when we were at Medford, and going into the first corner, it's just everything is so weird, like pulling the Hydra with my right hand. So.
You get used to it real fast.
Yeah.
Took me like a day for that stuff. You just got to go drive a bunch, get a lot of laps. And then every once in a while you're like, whack, hit a door or something like that on accident, you know, reaching for an e-brake, whack. But
I mean, I guess if they're cheap.
Yeah.
A lot cheaper than wrecking these.
Yep.
Actually, I'm impressed. Not a scratch.
Yeah, so that's amazing with Drift Week this year and last year. There was extremely little carnage except burning down an entire car.
Yeah.
But almost no body damage on any of the cars. A little bit, but not bad. Even Fielding's car was just like, because his car's paper mache, it was smashed in and just popped right back out.
Well, it seemed like Dan's car getting hit twice, and hearing the story how he got hit at NOLA.
Yeah.
There was a time, I think it was mid-pond, Hurt, Dan, and I, we were all super close to each other, and we all avoided each other and didn't hit at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's part of the experience, is knowing when something doesn't feel right and knowing when to bail. And I think that's probably the one thing I'm actually good at.
You got to get good at it. You're going to smash your car.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Would you do Drift Week 3?
PNW, right?
Maybe.
Let's do it.
I need to go research it and everything.
April?
See, I ask everyone to do. I didn't lead anybody on when to do Drift Week 3. Everybody told me April. I don't know why. I walked around. The only person that didn't say it was like Dan. Dan's like, please not so soon. And I was like, don't worry, Dan. You don't have to come with it. Come to it. And he's like, oh, I have to though. Fear of missing out. He's like, I'm gonna come.
The only thing I will say is if you want to do something that goes north, mid-April is probably your best chance, because
doesn't it rain a ton in the Pacific Northwest in April?
But that's kind of like the churn.
Yeah.
So
wouldn't it be awful working on the cars in April?
Oh, we stop at my shop in Portland if we get to it.
Oh, that'll work.
Yeah.
Can we ship everything there? Is it big enough?
Yeah.
He has to think about it. He's like, I don't want poor people drift cars there.
If it's right-hand drive, it's free.
Oh, okay.
If it's a Corvette, it's $100 surcharge per day.
Oh,
Yeah.
The Corvette guys can afford it because their cars are so much cheaper than these. All right, well, thank you so much for supporting the event. We couldn't have done it without you. This is an incredibly expensive event to host. Everything is on the road the entire time, so without the sponsors, couldn't have done it. So a huge thank you to him. Please go to his website, check out his inventory, browse around, see what he does. We really appreciate you. There we go, thank you.
Well.
Boom.
About the inventory.
Oh yeah.
I haven't bought a single thing since the price.